Welcome to the Business Bravery podcast, inspiring stories from coaches and course creators to help you do the next brave thing in your business. Coming up on the Business Bravery podcast. The hardest part of making this shift is actually in my head, right? The doing the work hasn't been that hard, but my brain has been wanting to tell me through this. It's like, this won't work, especially with the feed posts. It just really wants, it won't work. You're too disconnected from your community. Things aren't timely enough. People won't buy, all of this kind of stuff. And I keep having to say, okay, thanks, brain. I appreciate your thoughts, but we're testing this out. And, this really does free up more time of other days. I'm your host, Tiffany Gilliland, an Australian business and mindset coach with 10 years experience in online marketing and the creator of the Business Bravery framework. I help coaches like you to be brave so you can stop dreaming and start doing that next big brave step and finally make more impact and get more clients. From speaking on camera to selling to launching, my approach to bravery helps you take bigger leaps without the mindset spirals. It's the secret ingredient to bigger results. In today's episode, I want to share my thoughts and experiences around the idea of batching content in bigger batches. Okay, I've labeled this how to batch content for your coaching business. And yeah, I just want to share this experience, especially as someone who I have a background in content creation for myself and for clients. I started out in 2011 creating content for clients. I was working for educational institutions, universities here in Australia, and other higher education institutions here in Australia. Kind of like the in the US, I believe they have like community colleges and things like that. Our system doesn't work exactly the same way, but something similar to that. It's like not a 4-year degree. Not that we have 4-year degrees in Australia. Anyway, I'm getting off track. I have dot points. I have a timer so that I can make this an episode that doesn't go on forever and ever and can be value packed. So, hang on, I need to. Okay, so as I was saying, I have a background in doing content. However, for me, like my personality type, for a number of different reasons, I guess, is that I have always just enjoyed creating content like a week ahead, maybe a week or two ahead, all that kind of thing, sometimes longer over the Christmas break. However, the sitting down and doing a month's worth of content in one day for me has always been, until recently, kind of nails on a chalkboard, or like, razor blades down your veins or something. Very graphic, sorry. That's probably too graphic, and I apologize if that triggered anybody. Yeah, I'm trying to get that feeling across of just, I don't know, like those days, like those are the days, and I have tried it before, and this is how it's gone. It's been a case of, okay, I'll sit down, I'll do, all right, I'm going to do a big batch of content. The whole day is going to be focused on the big batch. All right, here we go. And then, okay, so it's like you sit down, you look at a blank cursor on a page, and then it's like, oh, you know what? I definitely have to go do the dishes. Yep, let's go do the dishes. And then it's like, yes, let's do the dishes, come back, now I can get started. And then it's like, oh, hang on, there was that thing for that client. I should really do that now. And then it's like, okay, I can't start yet. I need to get into the zone. I'm going to watch a YouTube video from another creator that'll get me in the zone. Or one of my favorites is I'll get on Instagram and I will look at what has been like what's trending at the moment, or other people's content for ideas. And that's not a bad idea, unless you don't have like a timer going or something to keep you on track. Otherwise, you lose another couple of hours there, and then suddenly it's time for lunch. Then you've got to have lunch. And like, we can't possibly start content when there's lunch to be had. So we have the lunch, and then we have to do the dishes after the lunch. And then maybe we just need to potter around the house a little bit, like, oh, it's dusting day. I'll do the dusting, right? And, that's only 10 minutes or something. So, we do those things, then we come back and it's like, I can't possibly start right now. Like, so do you see how you can end up with this kind of thing. And then what happened to me a number of times is it would get to 4 p.m. and I'd be like, okay, I'll just do next week's content. And I'd quickly hammer out, 3 posts for next week. I will get into more details. I've gone off track, but that is what it looked like before I put some changes in and approached things in a different way, shifted my identity, and all of that good stuff. The reasons for this for this change is that I have a really, really strong why in this situation. So number one is I have to manage chronic health stuff and family stuff. So it can be very useful to have certain days for certain things. And it just allows me to focus. I've switched into content creation Mondays. Monday here in Australia is actually still Sunday evening in the US. And so like for international clients, there's less expectations that there'll be stuff from me and that kind of thing. And yeah, then just for my Australian clients, it's just, hey, you will hear, I'll be working on your projects from Tuesday to Friday and things like that. And I'll talk to you a bit about how that balance has gone. All right. So the other part of my personality is it's really, I have struggled with sitting down doing the same thing for hours and hours on end. Like my days have always been, hey, cool, I've got 90 minutes, 2 hours on a project, and then I need a different project. I need that variety and things like that. However, some things that I have come across from people who are further along than me, they've scaled up their business and things like that. Some podcasts that I've been listening to, they all talk about doing things in these bigger batches. And so, because of this, right, this is something I wanted to try out because on the quest of trying out all of the things, I've only been in online marketing for 10 years, been running my business since 2017-ish in this form. And so because of that, it's like I haven't tried all of the things. And I have learned to overcome things from my life and things like that, like in terms of my health. And I've managed to become somebody who looks after her health better, more consistently, that kind of stuff. I have lost a bunch of weight. I'm still, I'm in the messy middle of that and weight loss. There's been some health things which has impacted weight loss, that kind of thing. So, but it's just like, well, if I can try, like, here's my thinking is like, if I can try these new things in other areas of my life and things that require discipline and being okay with boredom, like, this is the biggest part of this. Like, it's not even in my dot points here, but actually, like, this is all an exercise in boredom, which sounds crazy, sounds strange, sounds like something I shouldn't be saying on a podcast, especially when so much of what I talk about is like keeping it fun and interesting in your business. However, in a book quite some time ago, the book is called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I'm pretty sure this is where I read it. I was reading that book around this time, so I hope it's from him. But there's a section where they talk about the people who get to be excellent in their fields, Olympians, that kind of stuff. Sorry, that's a poor way of saying it. Olympians, CEOs, big business owners, that kind of stuff. Sports people, excellence in sport, that kind of stuff. The biggest thing that they have going for them is their ability to handle boredom, their ability to be disciplined in the face of boredom. And I remember when I read this years ago and how I thought, wow, gosh, yeah, he makes a great point because, like even if you've done it 300 times, you've still got to get up at 4 a.m. to train, right? The same with running a business. At some points, you are repeating the same things over and you have to keep getting up and, doing them over and over. And that is something that I think there's been a part of me where it's like, oh, now it's time to pivot, or, that didn't really work, even though I didn't, like that offer didn't work, that launch didn't work, even though I didn't really give it enough time, enough build up, probably didn't put myself out there, that kind of stuff. So Yes, this this is kind of an exercise in being okay with a certain amount of boredom, with the idea being that this frees up time so that I have time for things that have been previously ignored because I've been busy. So things like the being able to get an opt-in happening, doing my email list again, right? I have a couple of hundred people on an email list that I built up years ago that haven't heard from me in a couple of years. And, I have a ton of cool stuff to tell them and stuff about bravery and all of that good stuff, which aligns with exactly who I was a few years ago when those people got on my email list. So, yes. Anyway, so this is part of what I'm thinking. Plus, I like the idea of, content creation Mondays. I get to look after me first before then helping my clients. This is something that has also been skills that I've had to build for myself. My former people pleasing side used to be very easy to prioritize the clients because they pay the money, right? Prioritize them first and then have no time for stuff for me, right? So if you are somebody who like I had this conversation actually with someone and I just really recognized it too. It's like at one point in time, like I didn't have a website of my own, even though I had done websites for clients, right? When I was doing more marketing services, because I was so burnt out doing all their stuff. By the time it came to me, I just had nothing left for me, that kind of thing. So anyway, this is part of what I'm doing. Back to my dot points, right? So in this episode, I think I've pretty much covered off why I'm switching, the how I'm switching, and then my progress on this. So I have been doing this. I'll talk to you about the how, but sort of since the end of December through to now, I'm recording at the end of January. You won't hear this until probably the end of February or something. All part of the fun creative process, that kind of thing. This podcast, I should have said this earlier, this podcast would be useful for anybody who struggles with consistency in various areas of your business, posting, income, sales, that kind of stuff. And if you're going along fine and then suddenly you miss a day and then you think, well, that's it. I'm inconsistent. I can't do this, right? So, and then it takes days, weeks, or months to get back to that habit you were building, probably because of some thoughts and stuff that's going on. And I will talk to you a bit about that. And if you think that consistency is this kind of, all in, all out, 100% perfection, got to do all the things, and maybe not recognizing that actually consistency builds over time and that maybe you can't jump in and do the equivalent of going to the gym 5 days a week straight away from going from zero. It's like you need to build up the muscles, the strength, the ability, and even the mental discipline around all of that stuff. Maybe you're okay with consistency, but you're plateauing at a certain income level, amount of clients, right? It might be a case of, okay, putting in certain things like this, some systems and that kind of thing that actually can free up time. So you've got more time and focus for clients, that kind of stuff. And this could be well worth it for you. Sorry, I've written this dot point really strange. This could be well worth it for you if you're interested in following along how I just explore freeing up time by batching and the other projects that I want to have time for. So the key takeaways for this episode, even though I'm nearly halfway through it, is deciding if bigger batches are for you, finding your own approach to bigger batches, learning from my lessons learned through the process. Okay. If you are listening to this podcast and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this would be amazing, I need help with this, then you are welcome to get in touch with me over on Instagram at Tiffany G Studios, or go to my website, tiffanygstudios.com, Tiffany, G for golf, Studios.com. And, grab the booking link, get in on a call, that kind of stuff. DM me over on Instagram. There's no underscores, no spaces, just at Tiffany, G for golf, Studios. And yeah, come find me over there. So anyway, let me just, before we dive into this, define batch creation. So for anyone who isn't aware, creating content in a batch, it can be a batch of social posts, it can be a batch of podcasts and that kind of stuff. And creating sort of a few weeks or months in advance is what I mean by batch creation, right? And so what I'm moving to, I talked about how I kind of was doing week ahead, and I have an assistant who helps me do some of the visuals and the scheduling. And part of the reason why I got her in is because having somebody waiting for me keeps me on track and getting them the content. So while I don't necessarily need that as much now, especially because I've got to schedule a lot of my own reels, I schedule my own podcast just because the podcast videos are quite big, and I don't want my assistant to have to spend hours uploading a long video for her internet stuff. So yeah, but it was really helpful for me in setting that kind of discipline, that sort of thing. Also because in the beginning, like for me, whether or not I post a post, it's like I didn't really see it as letting anyone down, if that makes sense. It's not, I didn't value it the same as, a client has a deadline, they're expecting something from you, that sort of thing. So, and just in my head, it was very easy to procrastinate and that kind of thing. Whereas having somebody outside of me waiting for it, like even having an accountability partner or something like that isn't quite the same for me on that. But having somebody who they're set up, they get paid whether I send her content or not. So it's like I have to have something for her. And that just really helped me to build that discipline, that kind of thing. And also at the time when I started my business, I had a part-time day job. So I was juggling a lot of things, and having somebody just take something off my mental load was huge. So what I'm moving to is having a setup where I have content creation Mondays. So when I say that, you need to know that my working day is not an 8-hour day. I'm working probably 4 hours focus time. There's like an hour of doing stuff on social media with people, and there's some breaks and stuff for lunch, that kind of thing. I like my subconscious does some great work over lunch break, and I do the lunch, I do the dishes, and sometimes it comes up with great ideas, that sort of thing. So yeah, what I'm moving to when I say content creation Mondays is 1 week is planning out for the next month, is like doing all the planning is week one, or that ends up being like the last week of the month. And then the first week is writing posts and all the posts for the calendar month ahead, right? Because this is all about becoming calendar month ahead. Then the following week is podcast week. And so that involves first I pull out all of the reels and snippets that I'm going to use for all the podcast episodes. I do 4 in a batch at once. And those days involve the Sunday for a couple of hours doing a bit of prep and having some things prepped. And so things like, what clips am I going to pull out? What's the title and description? Is the intro recorded? All that stuff. This is for catching up on the backlog of podcast episodes. So in the future, it will move to a system of after I record, then I do all of that kind of prep for the editing right after or within a day of recording the episode while that episode's still fresh. I use some AI to help me. If that is something that you're interested in, I share about that on my feed, get in touch. I run free podcast accountability groups too, where we talk about this stuff and I share my process, that kind of stuff as well. And you can get help with your podcast, all that kind of thing. If I won't go into too much detail because not everybody's into podcasts. Something else to know about, like just to know about that podcast week, is that there's prep, there's the podcast day, and then I have overflow time on the Tuesday, right? Because I'm building new skills. Sometimes things come up. Sometimes I take a bit longer on something to think about things, that kind of stuff. So that is what I do there. And then the final week, the 4th week of the month, is to do the reels, like actually write the captions and stuff for the reels and record any sit down reels, like anything that's not trending. And at the moment, I'm barely getting those done and barely getting any, like, trending's just not even on my radar. I know it should be, but it's not. So that's where I'm at. This is a process, right? If you take nothing else from this is a process. And it's like, hey, here's the things I can do right now. Those are things for the future, right? As I get better at this, I get faster at it, that kind of stuff. And especially with having the different time for the prepping of the episodes to be edited, that kind of stuff. So the other thing with the podcasting is it's like the actual editing of the episodes isn't that intensive. Like, I don't go in and remove stuff and all that sort of thing. However, what is the most intensive part is choosing which clips to do. So there's just stuff that I've now learned that I can do, like while I'm recording. I can make notes of that sort of thing, and I use AI called Swell AI that you can upload the episode and it does a whole transcript, and you can like ask it questions to find your highlights, or it will choose them for you, that kind of stuff. So yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm moving to. So now let me update you on how things have gone, right? Now that I've been doing this for a month. All right. So number one, sort of some of the hardest part of making this shift is actually in my head. Right. The doing the work hasn't been that hard, but my brain has been wanting to tell me through this. It's like, this won't work, especially with the feed posts. It just really wants, it won't work. You're too disconnected from your community. Things aren't timely enough. People won't buy, all of this kind of stuff. And I keep having to say, okay, thanks, brain. I appreciate your thoughts, but we're testing this out. And, this really does free up more time of other days, because previously when I'd spend an hour a week to do these posts, and I'd send it to my assistant to help do the graphics and the scheduling. And I just like fit it in. And oftentimes she'd be waiting. I'd be like, oh, I'm going to get it to you late this week. Whereas now I get it done a month in advance. So she knows every week that there's stuff there for her to do, which is amazing. I don't even have to message her now and say it's there. She just knows. We've got it marked in a Notion calendar. It's marked with a green heart. She knows, okay, if it's got a green heart, I can schedule it and get it sorted. And it's awesome. So yeah, even things like all the podcast having all the thumbnails and stuff sorted. So she has a whole document that she can refer to, and she can still do her weekly stuff. And I just know all of that stuff is done in advance. And it is amazing to not feel guilty all the time, not beat myself up for not being a better manager and that kind of thing. Like, there's this phrase that goes through my head at times. It's like, A grade staff don't work for B grade managers. So it's like, if you don't have your shit together as entrepreneur, as a business owner, as like the leader of your business, and you're not setting the tone and have your shit together, then you're not going to get the right staff for you, right? I'm sure many of us have stories where we've tried to work for bosses where they've forgotten what they said, and they didn't give you the task, and yet they're upset that you didn't get it done in time, and some of that stuff. And if you're sitting there going, oh, I have ADHD or ADD or something, this is not shots fired at you guys or anything like that. There's ways to manage all of that kind of stuff and that kind of thing, and still be an A grade manager through that stuff as well. Get in touch with me. My clients, some of my clients have ADHD, and I'm pretty good at working with you guys. So yeah. So anyway, but even just as a person, it's just like, I just want to be someone who is like an A grade manager, helps my team do their best work, and sets a good tone and that kind of thing, and really meets them where they are. Because there've been times where I've just felt like they're just so much better than me at getting everything done. How do they do that? That sort of thing. So, all right. Some other things that have been going on in my head for this is like, I can't get it all done, right? It's too much. If I'm too far ahead, people won't connect and they won't buy from me. What if I can't commit? What if I change my mind? And so I've had to move through a whole phase of, okay, and I teach this in my Bravery board masterclasses. Those are coming up again in March, right? How we reframe. and how like when we're setting goals and plans, it's like looking at the fears and the objections that our brain comes up with when you're setting them, right? And this is why I set brave goals rather than achievable goals, because that can help trigger these things so that we can remove, like work through some of these sabotages. And you can also factor things down a bit if you want. The goal doesn't have to be as big or brave as we recognize how big those things are. So, yeah, it's then reframing this and moving into it. Okay, just it's possible that I can still be connected to my community. I mean, I spend quite a bit of time in DMs and chatting with people, that kind of stuff. So, there's other ways for me to connect. And yeah, and I can maybe have my stories be more of that real-time stuff, whereas my feed is more of the hey, what's going on? And even the reels, like I want to get to a point where maybe I'm recording a couple of reels for the week just because they're more on topic, more in real time, some of that sort of thing. So, yeah. So, just to take from this, some of this, when you want to make a big change like this, it happens in your mind first. You need to be able to visualize yourself, you need to commit to the why, and you need to really start changing in your brain to being in that new identity. This is what I teach in the Bravery Board masterclasses. And if this is something you're interested in learning more about, get in touch with me. And so, yeah. So now my progress so far, right? My update number one after my social posts, like I made some notes for myself so that I could keep on track for you guys. So yeah, like I planned out the social posts in the same day and I wrote them like I mean I planned them the week before, but the planning the week before is kind of high level stuff. And I'm also working in other planning stuff like other projects and that kind of stuff. But then when I'm writing the social post, I plan them out, I write them. I need you to know that I have like this beautiful like time blocking thing. It's like I'm going to work on these posts and then this and then this. And it definitely didn't happen that way and it never does. And I'm okay with that. But it did happen by the end of the day, right? I had a lot of fun doing this and getting ahead on this stuff and having it there for my assistant. And just like I said, just not having that guilt and just really feeling like I am an A grade manager to have an A grade team, especially as I want to scale up my business, right? So after doing the podcast post, like this is a lot more labor intensive. I'm learning new processes. I have checklists to keep me on track for, okay, we do this step, then this step. And I'm definitely still a bit in the unconscious competence. Sorry, no. Unconscious competence is what you want. I'm in the conscious incompetence stage, right? So it's like I'm working through things slowly. What's this step? Then what's that step? And it feels like I am working against my brain. Like my brain doesn't want to work this way. It's like, oh, this is hard. It's like walking through mud. And in this situation, I just really connect with my why because I really want to give this a good go and get the time to do other elements of my business. And not only that, just to free up the mental load. It's like, hey, I get to focus on this on Monday and then I don't have to think about it again for the rest of the week, generally, unless I'm recording a podcast episode with someone or something. And even then, that has a whole system and it's much, much easier to do. I'm switching those podcast episodes to being 30 minutes, which is why I'm trying to keep this down to, I've got a timer for 30 minutes. I know I've got a couple of minutes left. So 30 to 40, this is where we're up to. So after the podcast, I found it quite tiring, but what I did find was that doing the batches got faster. So it's like I might be a bit slow on the first one, but then the first episode, but then by episode 2, 3, 4, it just gets faster and I, make decisions quicker and I can edit those 4 posts in the same time as doing one post, right? But like I said before, the prep time on the Sunday is key. Although in my new system, once I've caught up on the backlog for anything new I'm recording, I do that prep time right after recording. So it's all done while it's fresh. And then the overflow time on the Tuesday is key, just for me mentally. It's like because by the end of the day, I'm slowing down. I recognize that about myself. So having some overflow time on the next day just really helps me. And again, I don't do an 8-hour day. So yeah, so my update after doing the Reels week, right? So we're into week like Reels and overflow and that kind of stuff. So in complete total transparency, the Reels day did get interrupted by a client emergency. Something was happening with her automated emails and form intake process that was causing client inquiries to be routed to the wrong franchises, that kind of stuff. So, yes, I do still do a little bit of service-based work. And yeah, especially for this is a long-term client. She's been with me since 2020. So that was something that was like, okay, this is not ideal, but I can't say I'll get to this tomorrow. Like, this has to be done. So what happened was the new reels that I was going to record that. So yeah, the new reels that I was going to record didn't happen when I had planned them to happen, and they had to go into like another slot during the week, and then that slot got pushed because it wasn't content creation day. And so that part hasn't gone, but the core stuff of the stuff for the podcast, those reels that come out like and on the other platforms, they're, normal videos, little snippets and things. So I'm really committed to those because, to be honest, like I think like just more people engage with those. They're like these little snippets, and I'm really doing my hosts justice by having those in. So yeah, that that happened. So as far as I'm concerned, like it wasn't 100% success, but it was a success for me. And just working in those other reels, like I mean, we'll try again next month, and I'm trying to catch up on getting those other ones recorded. I just yeah, I've got client work this week, and so that kind of thing, and that's already been something that hasn't made it onto the list. So it's okay if that comes in a week or two, right? So another key part of this is just being kind to myself, that this is a process, and just because we have a big plan doesn't mean it goes off amazingly, and that you know it's okay if this takes time to build and it's not perfect. Okay. And sort of being all right with that, and just knowing it's like, actually, I'm still happy with everything I've achieved, and all of the content is going out and all of that kind of stuff. So because I spent time, I don't know if I explained this, because I spent time over Christmas getting ahead on 4 episodes of the podcast and all that, I did that over 4 days straight. That was horrible. Don't want to do that again. So like I said to you, I don't enjoy doing like one project and just being focused on that for days, or, a whole day. So this is where I like this kind of middle ground of Mondays and doing a different thing on each Monday, because then I can really just get in and do what I need to for that day, and just know that the other tasks will be looked after on their other days, and it doesn't burn out all of my energy. So again, understanding how you work and what works for you is part of this process, right? So my lessons learned is just that it's a process of learning new skills. It will be hard, but also worthwhile. And it does get easier as I do this, right? I get faster at writing the posts. I give my brain more evidence of actually, I got it done last time. Sure, it was slower in the beginning, but it gets easier, right? And my brain is still trying to tell me, especially around the posts, that, I'm feeling it's like, oh, we're feeling a bit disconnected from people. This is a thought, not necessarily true, right? It's a thought about what's going on, something that could be reframed. Some other things, it's like, oh, my content isn't great, But I used to think that even when I was doing it weekly, because I felt like I was doing it so rushed and not really thinking it through. So actually, no, that's just a thing, a well-worn pathway in my brain that it wants to keep telling me that story. So it's a matter of, sitting down and going, okay, brain, yep, I get what you're saying. That's perhaps a valid concern, but actually it's possible that my content isn't that bad. and that doing it the other way wasn't working for me for a host of other reasons. We're trying out these new reasons, and it's just because you reframe something once doesn't mean that other thoughts not going to keep coming up as you make change and behavior change, right? This is the value of having someone like a coach to talk this out with, or that, someone who can see these blind spots, these repeating patterns, things like that, who can help you move through these and sort of help some of the stuff stick. So that's what I do with my clients when they're doing brave things. So moving forward, right, I'm actually scaling back a little on the content, got a little over ambitious, and found that between the podcast and then making sure my assistant has 3 posts to post and then other things that I was trying to fit into the week, it just seemed like on some days it's like I'm supposed to be posting in the morning and in the evenings. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, I'm finally doing this content creation thing right. But actually, I'm not sure it's really impacted that well on the feed stuff. So I'm pulling back on some of the feed posts. My assistant will have other things to do, like other graphic design stuff and that kind of thing. And then I will be able to have more time for doing the reels and recording those or something. So yeah, that's what I'm playing with moving forward. And this is what I love about creating these new systems, creating new behaviors, becoming a new person. It's like, it's okay if it's not perfect. And this gets to be a process of building these skills. So the other cool thing is that I am having ideas for other projects. I have a number of ideas for opt-ins and things like that. And I'm fitting them into my schedule as best as I can. And yeah, that's very exciting to actually move forward on these things that I just kept saying, oh, next week, next week, next week, and wasn't having time for that. Like it was always next week would come and it's like, oh, I don't have time for that. So I hope from this process you can see, kind of get an idea about whether or not bigger batches of content are for you, whether or not it's worth trying. Really committing to the why is the strongest change that I have made for me for this. And if you are tossing it up or anything, feel free to reach out to me. Excuse me. Reach out to me over on Instagram at Tiffany G Studios, Tiffany. G for golf, Studios, no spaces, no dashes, no underscores. And yeah, just get in touch and start chatting with me. Right. So uh, finding your own approach to bigger batches. So something I didn't maybe talk about enough in this is that I've talked to a number of people about this, and when I tell them what I'm doing, their eyes have lit up and gone, oh, wow, I want to do that for me. And they're all coming up with their own approaches and, like things that work for them. It's not a case of, oh, Tiffany told me to do it this way and this is how it has to be done. No, this is, I'm trying to work out what works for me, my brain, my process, my business, my life at the moment, right? And also just those takeaways from my lessons learned and understanding that it's likely that you'll have your own lessons learned. Like if I would hesitate to say that if you are someone who can go, hey, I'm going to change the way I do things in this big dramatic way and can get it done perfectly the first time and keep doing it perfectly, then first up, hats off to you. You're amazing. Not sure you're not a psychopath, but hats off to you. You're amazing. And I would wonder if, are you pushing yourself hard enough? Like, I think part of what we're doing with this stuff and just unlearning old behaviors and things, I just think there's always going to be a bit of, oh, I got this part right, but this part didn't quite come together and that kind of thing. Or if you're listening to this and it's like, I've got this amazing mind management technique or whatever, and that's what helps me do this. And then get in touch so I can interview you for the podcast because we all need to know about it. Share it with me. Okay, so this kind of behavior change comes from shifting into a new identity and getting the subconscious on board, right? I talked about that with the bravery board concept. I've talked about that and like that's what the bravery boards and the business bravery framework does, getting your subconscious on board, being okay with change. Like we talked about the actual, working through the thoughts and that kind of thing, but it's just that uh, um, Sorry, I just had a notification come up. So like you can't record this on your computer on Zoom without having been connected to the internet and then things pop up. So it's getting your subconscious on board as well. And that's part of the meditation, the visualization side of things, the journaling and that kind of thing that we do as part of this. So, which has definitely been part of this. I forgot to say, like, each day I'm sitting down and I'm journaling out, here's what I'm going to do, each small step, and getting my subconscious on board. Even on Sundays, it's like, here's how the week's going to go and that kind of stuff, which just really helps with all of that stuff and just helping with the new thoughts, the it's possible, and we're just trying out, we're living in the realm of possibility, all of that good stuff, right? So this is what I do with my clients, right? I also do the marketing side. That 10 years in online marketing comes in. That's a huge part of what we do, but it's this stuff, because marketing strategy only gets you so far. If you don't have the subconscious on board, you will sabotage your efforts to get to a new level. So the brain will challenge that shift. You will find things get in the way, that sort of thing. You'll find you just don't have time for it right now, right? And it's finding the right tools that are tailored specifically to you. And yeah, we shift fast because I spent so long struggling with these things so that you don't have to, right? So get in touch with me if you want to work through this stuff. Get in touch with me to tell me your thoughts on moving to bigger batches, what you try out. I would love to have your example as part of this podcast. And yeah, like that would be amazing. All right. Thank you so much for listening. And that's it from me. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Business Bravery podcast. Has this episode inspired you to do something brave? Even if it's only send a difficult email, please share it with me on Instagram or other social media channels. Feel free to tag me at Tiffany G Studios. That's TIFFANY G for golf, STUDIOS, no spaces, no underscores, etc. Or you can use the hashtag Business Bravery Podcast so that I can cheer you on, and together we can inspire other coaches and course creators to do brave things in their business and life. Now, I'm Tiffany, and I'll leave you with this one last thing. What's one brave thing you're going to do today? It doesn't have to be big. Even the smallest steps can create the most massive results. So again, feel free to share it with me either publicly or privately so that I can cheer you on. That's it from me. Until next time, bye for now.